For this video, we're going to complete some of the problems from Unit 10 Worksheet 5 together. The problems that are highlighted in blue are the problems for the video. So in the first 6, we're going to factor by using a box problem. Notice that they do not have equal signs, so we are not solving, we're just factoring. Number 1, we want to figure out 2 and add to 8. Well, the only numbers that we know that multiply to 7 are 1 and 7. Those both multiply or add to 8. So we have x plus 1 times x plus 7. In number 2, we have h squared h minus 28. So we want to multiply to negative 28 and add to negative 3. Because you're multiplying to a negative number, you need one of each sign. So I want a positive and a negative. If I'm adding to a negative, my bigger number has to be negative. So we would have negative 7 and positive 4. So x minus 7 and x plus 4. In number 3, we have h squared minus 6h plus 9. So we want to 9 and add to negative 6. Because we're multiplying to a positive but adding to a negative, both of our numbers have to be negative. So in this case, we would use negative 3 and negative 3. So we have h minus 3 and h minus 3. Remember, if it's the same, we can always write it as h minus 3 squared. In number 5, there is no. So we want to know what multiplies to negative 25 and adds to 0. So we want the same number with different signs. So in this case, we would want 5 and negative 5. We would have a plus 5 and a minus 5. In the next section, we are going to solve using ZPP, which is zero product property. So each parenthesis with an x, or each term with that has an x, is going to get set equal to 0. So we have x plus 7 equals 0, and x minus 3 equals 0. So in our first parenthesis, we're going to subtract, or our first equation, we're going to subtract 7 from both sides, so x equals negative 7. In our second one, we're going to add 3, so x equals 3. In number 9, there are 3 terms. So the first term is x equals 0. That's already factored and solved for. We have x plus 1 equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0. So in the next equation, we would subtract 1 from both sides, so x equals negative 1. In the last equation, we would add 2, so x equals 2. So in this case, there were 3 x's, so we have 3 solutions. Now we're going to put together, or we are going to factor, and we're going to solve using ZPP. So in number 11, first we want to figure out what are 2 numbers that multiply to 10 and add to 7. So those numbers are 5 and 2. So we would have x plus 5 times x plus 2 equals 0. Then we want to set each of those equal to 0. So we have x plus 5 equals 0 and x plus 2 equals 0. So in the first equation, we would subtract 5 from both sides, so x equals negative 5. In the second one, we would subtract 2, so x equals negative 2. In number 13, it's already set equals 0, so we want 2 numbers that multiply to 15 and add to 16. So we want 2 positive numbers. So 3 and 5 are 2 numbers that multiply to 15, but those don't add to 16. So we need a different combination. That combination would be 15 and 1. So we would have x plus 15 and x plus 1 equals 0. Each one would get set equal to 0, and we would solve. So the first one, we would subtract 15 from both sides. X equals negative 15. The second one, we'd subtract 1 from both sides, so x equals negative 1. Now, in number 14, our equation is not set equal to 0. So we need to move 51 to the other side. So we're going to add 51 to both sides. So we get x squared minus 20x plus 51 equals 0. So we need 2 numbers that multiply to 51 and add to negative 20. So because we are multiplying to a positive but adding to a negative, both of our numbers need to be negative. So we would have negative 3 and negative 17. So we would get x minus 3 times x minus 17 is equal to 0. Each parenthesis gets set equal to 0, so x minus 3 equals 0, and x minus 17 equals 0. We can add 3 on both sides, so x equals 3. We can add 17 on both sides, so x equals 17. Number 15. We don't have a middle term. Apply to negative 16 and add to 0. So they're the same number with different signs. So we know the number that multiplies to 16 is 4. So we would have 4 and negative 4. So we have y plus 4 times y minus 4 equals 0. So each parenthesis gets set equal to 0. So we have y plus 4 equals 0 and y minus 4 equals 0. The first equation we would subtract 4. So y equals negative 4. The second parenthesis we would add 4. So y equals positive 4. In 17, it is not set equal to 0 yet. So we're going to subtract 82 from both sides. X squared minus x minus 90 equals 0. So we need two numbers that multiply to negative 90 and add to negative 1. So we want numbers that are right next to each other. So that would be 9 and 10. And because we're adding to a negative, our bigger number is going to be negative. So we have negative 10 and positive 9. X minus 10 times x plus 9 equals 0. So x minus 10 is equal to 0, and x plus 9 equals 0. In the first equation, we can add 10, so x equals 10. The second equation, we can subtract 9, so x equals negative 9. In our last problem, number 18, we are going to subtract 2x from both sides. So we get x squared minus 11x plus 18 equals 0. So we need two numbers that multiply to negative or to positive 18 and add to negative 11. So those two numbers are going to be 9 and 2, and they both need to be negative. So we have x minus 9 times x minus 2 equals 0. We set each part equal to 0. So x minus 9 equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0. We can add 9 to both sides, so x equals positive 9. We can add 2 to both sides, so x equals 2. So you are then going to complete 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16, 19, and 20, and then you're going to take a picture and submit it on Canvas.